Welcome and thank you for joining us today on A Lawyer and a Mediator Walk into a Bar. We'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land from which we broadcast today and acknowledge their elders, past, present, and emerging. Hi, everybody. This is Paula. This show is not about legal advice. It's really just about our experiences going through the process in the family law courts, what can work, what doesn't work. It's just about the process, giving you some familiarity with it, and hope that gives you a little bit of a help.
You're listening to a Mel and Kim Productions podcast. What happens when a lawyer and a family mediator step into a bar? Join us to find out. Diane and Paula have real conversations about the family law process in Australia. Whether you're a part of the family law system or about to engage in the process, find out what the realities versus perceptions are. Diane and Paula don't hold back on their individual perspectives and experiences.
Welcome to Season 2 of A Lawyer and a Mediator Walk into a Bar. My colleague and friend Paula Applehans is here with us today.
Hi, everybody.
And I'm Diane Loveday of Bayside Mediation.
And I'm with Betts Law Company.
And we are starting on a series of conversations around family violence, what it looks like, how it's perceived, how we can work through the process from a lawyer perspective and from a mediator perspective.
And keep that in mind. There are the two perspectives. They do complement each other. It's not an either-or situation, I think, is what a lot of folks...
well, that's what we're trying to help people understand.
Yeah.
And with the greatest respect, some of your colleagues. So,
yeah, with great respect.
because it can be
we're calling what they are, right? I mean,
fair enough. So first off, I just want to remind anybody listening to today and for this series that if this causes you any stress, distress, if it is triggering for you in any way, shape or form, please reach out through our website or reach out to us individually or find yourself family and friends or other
Local
support networks,
yeah.
therapists, whoever you need in order to help you through this because it can be a very triggering conversation. I was actually sitting in a seminar and so I'm going to give away a bit of personal history here, but anyway, I was sitting in a seminar where a woman started describing some of the behaviours of family violence and I was triggered. I had to stop myself, snivelling. I'm sitting there with my colleagues thinking this is not a good look. I need to stay professional. So you just never know when something is going to trigger you. So just want you to be aware that if we say or do something, please go and get help.
Please do. And to be very honest, we get help as well.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, people ask us all the time, you deal with some really sensitive subject matter sometime and, how do you deal with it? And I'm like, my therapist's on speed dial. She could see me usually within a day or two.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one of those things we all do it.
Yep.
Because it does happen.
Yes.
I was looking up some things, and I thought it was a really low number that 25% of women in Australia have experienced family violence. I'm like, I've been here 7 years. I've been very much out and about. I have yet to meet a woman who has not experienced some form of family violence. So family violence has a website on victoria.gov.
Right.
But, and it talks about the definition, what it looks like. It's got some very good overviews as to what that is. And it gave a couple of stats. But that was the one that it didn't just strike me. It hit me in the head. That's underreporting at its finest.
Well, yeah, there's definitely that. But also, I think this leads us into this conversation about definition.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I experienced family violence as a child. I grew up with in a space where I experienced and witnessed some horrendous behaviours, but that would never be reported. That would not be something that anybody would even think about asking me in a personal family
back
situation.
In the day.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
There, honey. Go home and make it all right.
Yeah.
And I'm talking just the 80s, 90s.
Yeah, not that long ago.
It was, it's not ancient, guys.
No.
I've actually had several situations with clients just in the past 2 months. And I'm not going to name the police stations, but the idea of understanding what the definition of family violence is just went over their head.
Yeah.
And I mean, completely. And these are departments that are housed with a domestic violence person.
Yes.
that's posted. It's just been amazing to me.
The hit and miss at police stations.
Oh, I'm going to say there's a lot of swings and a miss, swings and a miss, and it's not funny. And I'm laughing because it just astounds me.
It's ironic. There's given the amount of exposure this receives,
and especially in the last 2 years,
and yet still, I got to say, in my experience, it's often the younger, freshly minted police who tend to be a little less aware.
But you would think that because of their age, they would be the most aware.
You would think, but
I mean, no, honestly, because TikTok, Instagram, all the social medias,
but they're
all
not
the different
watching
ways.
They're not looking at any of that.
Well, maybe they just flip past it. Scroll past it. Scroll.
They're not interested in that.
But still, they've got sisters, they've got mothers, they've got girlfriends.
Well, can I say, as a mediator, one of my little, and I probably shouldn't give this away, but when we're mediating and I'm hearing behaviour, because obviously I can't confront somebody in mediation and point out to them that
it's not your job.
No,
right?
it's not. It's not my job. But also, more importantly for me, is that if I lose the perpetrator, I'm no use to the victim. As much as I hate using those terms.
But it all goes pear-shaped after that.
Exactly.
And you're not getting anywhere. You're right back to square one.
They get up and walk out and I'm done.
Yeah. And that's not the reason.
So I will use a beautiful little line about, so how would you feel if somebody did that to your daughter? How would you feel if somebody treated your mother or your daughter or your sister like you treat her? Or I will say to them, you do realise that your child will choose a life partner based on who you are and how you treat her mother.
And sometimes that's over their head a little bit too, especially if they don't have children yet.
No, of course not.
Yeah, but
I obviously only use that when there's kids involved. But I have seen some startled looks on faces.
Yeah, but again, it's not me. That's not what I'm doing.
It's almost like a penny drops sometimes.
Oh, good.
That's what I'm saying. It can be a really powerful conversation to have because the penny drops. And it's like, oh, hell. Okay. Now, does it mean that they get better and they change it? I doubt it very much.
Just having that pause to think sometimes is what can reset.
Yeah.
Because we're really just looking, in some ways, you have to do the reset.
It's unlearning acceptable behaviours or behaviours that have been perceived to be acceptable. So,
well, the things, and it's funny because at some point, I'll look, because they're adults we're talking to, right, at this point, and we go through that, and they're like, it's not me, it's not me. Or conversely, I get I grew up in that situation, and this was normal to me, and it was normalized. And I'm like, okay, but do you recognize, because you use the term normalized, you normalized it.
Yeah.
Guess who gets to unnormalize it?
Yes. That's exactly the point, isn't it? You have
once
to
you
make
grow
a choice.
up, buddy. Yeah, once you grow up, guys, girls, once you grow up, you don't have to be that pattern that you saw. You get an active choice here. And I know it's tough, but taking that step to say this is an active choice.
It's not who I want to be. I remember having exact that conversation with myself. This is not the person I want to be.
Yeah.
I had to change. I had to change how I
perceived things, interacted with things,
exactly. So
accepted or not accepted things.
Yeah, exactly.
As to you, whether it's your behavior or somebody's behavior to you.
Yep.
And that's where it gets, unfortunately, that's where it gets a little mucky.
Yeah.
So if you don't mind, I'm going to actually.
Yeah, I think that's a really good idea to read the.
So I'm going to read from an actual intervention order, a family violence intervention order.
And we should clarify for our interstate guests.
This is Victoria.
This is Victoria, each state has its own version of this document.
So intervention orders are magistrates level. So it's by state.
Yes.
Just so everybody understands. It's like, but it's a family law thing. It's like, no, it's not. It's actually a local court.
It's a two different jurisdictions.
So this is where the police departments get involved. This is all local. But I found it fascinating because I actually had one judge, one magistrate, read off this list to the perpetrator and says, now, do you understand? And then he said several of the parameters. And I'll go over them because you'll have to understand because the definition has broadened.
Yes, massively.
It used to be, and people still have the perception that family violence is physical.
Yes.
And we've taken that next step to say, no, it's not, because these other things come in, and are just as effective in terrorizing somebody, tearing
That's a good
something
word for
down.
it. It is terrorizing.
I don't think there's any other word for it. I mean, they're like, oh, well, he didn't know better, smack on the hand. But so what we started off is the Family Violence Protection Act, 2008, defines family violence as behavior by a person towards a family member of that person that is physically or sexually abusive. So those are the attributes people most identify with. But emotionally or psychologically abusive, commercially abusive, threatening, coercion, or in any other way controls or dominates a family member and causes that family member to feel fear for the safety or well-being of that family member or another person. Family violence includes behavior that can cause a child to hear or witness or otherwise be exposed to the effects of these behaviors.
It's massive.
That's pretty broad. I mean, it's
very
broad,
broad.
but each of those words, is very precise in
Yes.
what they cover, isn't it?
Yeah, and the last couple of sentences where it's like any behaviour that controls or causes fear or enables a child to hear behaviour that makes them feel.
So we're going to break this down a little bit, I think, you and I, because, again, it is family violence. I think we need to understand it better.
Yeah.
I think we need to be able to put in our own head, what are some examples that would be considered? Now, here's the challenge. Because I've got several women that can rattle off everything that's been done, happening. But yet when they go to make these reports to the police station, it's still kind of, and again, no offense to any police officers or constables, but it is coming off as, there, honey, write it down. Maybe we'll make a report, maybe we won't. And these are women who already have intervention orders placed. So to me, it's like, you're on notice that there's already been these behaviors.
Yeah.
But at the same time, they're still kind of, well, maybe that's not, maybe you think it is. I had one domestic violence constable, head of that department. I had to have a conversation with him because you understand the fact, I said, the situation that was happening was one party would make appointments with the physicians, make appointments and statements to the kids' schools. Something is really almost, you can't understand why it's threatening, but changing the address for the council rates.
Yeah,
they were both living separately, and she would get a late notice. And like, why am I getting this late notice? It's like, oh, you look at the address was somewhere else. She didn't even live, and it wasn't addressed to the house that the council rates were. I mean, so in encouraging penalty rates,
Yes.
because somebody didn't get the statement on time,
Just making somebody's life more difficult than it needs to be.
and on purpose. I mean,
the focus
address does
is-
not
yeah,
change on its own.
And
Let's be honest. But these are the things I had to explain. It's like, you understand that this, it may be just a drop on a rock, but that entire boulder is going to crack and create a canyon
Eventually.
because of the quantity. Just everywhere this person turned, there was something else that was changed.
Yep.
And it affected her, whether it be penalties, whether it be missing dates to attend something. And it was just, I mean, and they're like, well, we've looked at the text messages because there's the parenting app, co-parenting apps. And they're like, well, it looks like she's yelling at him all the time. So perception comes in, bias comes in, because I'm looking at the co-parenting messages. He's looking at the co-parenting message, and we have completely different viewpoints on how that is affecting or manifesting. But it is. And then I had to go in and tell him all the other little things happening. He's like, well, I'm not really sure, if that really constitutes family violence. And I was like, I will send you the audio and the video from the magistrate reading this gentleman 3 times, the specific provisions on psychological and emotional and coercion. So I think the magistrate understood where the challenges were going to be here.
Did the penny drop for the young couple?
No, sorry. No. It was kind of,
And the sad thing is they don't realise how much courage it often takes. I really feel for guys in this situation because they get an even bigger stonewall because I've had guys who have a classic family violence situations, and they're told, "Oh, look, don't worry about it, mate, because you'll never get anywhere." And you go,
Oh, my guy was told if you report this, it's only going to get worse from her. And it's like, but that's the problem. I mean,
yeah, but
hello.
And then if we're looking from the female's perspective, so very often it takes them. I have these conversations regularly when they're telling me all this, and have you instigated an intervention order? Oh no, I don't want to make it worse.
Exactly.
I go, but hang on a minute.
It's already bad.
And if you don't do something tangible, so as if this does escalate, there is evidence that you have tried to put in place safety for yourself and your children, and this is how you feel, and some documented legal document that says this is what's been happening. If you don't do that, and then you turn around down the track and go, I often have conversations with people that are getting to the court stage and they're telling me all these terrible things. I said, is there any documented evidence? And they go, well, no. And you go, well, then, it's your word against his.
But it's amazing how much documentation that is there that they can get, whether it's video, but again, they have to take some active steps.
And that's the thing, it's the active steps. There's always one that sticks in my mind, and it was several years ago, and she was had been married for some 30 odd years to a police officer. And this goes some way to explaining sometimes why we have these barriers with our police. And let me say, I know there's some amazing police officers out there who do amazing work.
There are lots of amazing police officers, absolutely.
This particular situation, she was sitting, we were just having an initial conversation. She hadn't engaged the practice yet. And I was asking her a few questions, and she said, "Oh yeah, well, as you know, with police officers, there's a central bank account that their pay gets paid into, and then he would transfer money into our personal account." And I just looked at her and said, "I have never heard that before," and you could see the penny dropped. Now, she'd been in an abusive relationship for 30 years. She just didn't know.
Well, she was told that this is how it works.
Yes.
And why would you investigate it? Because this person who is your soulmate, love of your life, why would he lie to you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why would that be something I would question?
Yeah, exactly.
And
you can imagine how that impacted her and her sense of self, her view of the world. It was just an awful situation. But it can be that subtle and that
simple.
Simple, yeah. Just a really simple act of denying somebody access to something that is legally theirs, i.e. what do we earn in this household? And we get the more obvious ones, like we've got a matter at the moment where she was never even allowed to buy a pair of socks. 30 years of not being able, she had to account for every penny on a supermarket list receipt.
I remember having a relationship like that.
Did you?
Yeah. And at first it's like, okay, well, at the time I wasn't working, so it was there, in my head, being an independent female and working all my years. It's like, well, it is their money, so they want to account. That's fine. Here's the receipt. And they're like, well, why did we get this? And I was like, I wanted laundry detergent, Vanish, which part? And I'm looking over it all going, because this just happened to me the one time that all I was getting was like laundry supplies, paper supplies, all your pantry stuff, and it's just like, well, I was like, we do laundry. But I don't use Vanish. I don't use any of the additional accoutrements because you can put as much stuff in your laundry, right?
Yeah.
He's like, it's just powder, no downy, no softener. And he was like, okay, I don't. My clothes are a little more because we're close, right?
Yeah.
So I was like, no, I
take a little bit more care.
Yeah. I had to get the special detergent for wools and silks and there's and I was like, no, these are for the different clothes. He's like, you're making it too complicated. And I was like, yeah, no, no. That's when that particular moment for me that was when the light bulb went off. I was like, you know what, that's all right.
Yeah, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah. There are so many extremes.
Oh,
so it's like, to me though, it's that water drip that creates the Grand Canyon. It's all these little micro things. All of a sudden, it happens so almost organically that you really don't question it. You don't think of it. It's just, okay, it'll keep him from being upset. Easy enough for me to change. Yeah. Because as women, we just do.
We just go. And again, in fairness, I mean, I there are hypercritical. What I now sit back and look and see are hypercritical partners in both genders, and that is one of the tools that the manipulative, the controlling, the undermining they use to really chip away at the other party's self-esteem and sense of self. And often, by the time I get to see them or you get to see them, they're questioning their own sanity.
Everything.
Am I right? Is this okay?
Am I making a big deal out of this?
Nothing, yes. Because you're being told constantly that you're overreacting.
Yeah.
You're
dismissed.
Yeah.
Again, you're overreacting. It's like
Yeah.
Pity the fool whoever says that to me. We will show you overreaction just so you can understand the definitions.
But again, if you want to, if we want to get really into the nuance of family violence, there is the other side where you try and have a conversation with somebody, and every time you raise something that makes them uncomfortable, they become abusive or they overreact. They become
defensive, but to a different level.
Oh, and often it's quite extreme. The moment you
it's a flip. It's a flip of a switch. The minute you've hit something, and instead of having maybe a normal response, reaction, it gets elevated.
Completely.
Like out of a shotgun.
Yes.
Elevated. And you're like, what just happened?
Yeah. I was just trying to explain how I felt about something. Really?
Yeah.
Is that such a... yeah.
How is that something that you should be this defensive of?
Then you find yourself looking about how do I keep myself safe? And that's the thing. Whenever you have to stop and think, okay, am I safe? What do I need to do? Do I have to save? Do I have to move the kids? Do I have to move me? What do I need to do to keep myself safe? When you start having that internal conversation, then that should be a time when you start thinking, I shouldn't be here,
or I should need to talk to somebody to see about what I've got going on here. That to me is a perfect example of time to seek therapy. Yeah. Seek a therapist. Bounce these things off. You can only do what you can for you.
Yeah.
But sometimes it helps makes things more concrete.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it helps clarify in your own mind.
Yeah.
But be really careful who you pick.
Well, we always talk, be careful who you pick.
Yeah. It's
vetting somebody is not, but it can be time consuming sometimes, but don't let it be. But, call 3 people, 3 to 5 people.
Have a look at their qualifications, see where their expertise sits, understand, how long have they been doing this? Sometimes is a good, and I'm not talking law or mediation at this point. I'm actually talking,
the therapist you seek out.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not going to be, it's not always a match.
No.
And you have to be comfortable with what you're saying. You have to be comfortable in some ways, a little comfortable with what they're saying. You're not going to always be comfortable. But the point is you should, number one, have a safe zone. This is your safe zone. I could bark about anything, and somebody will help me break it down, be encouraging, be empathetic. But for me, I need somebody to give me, here's what I need to do A through Z next.
But see,
here's my list.
That's the thing, because there's different types of therapists.
Yes.
So, and people aren't aware of that. So there's different schools of thought in relation to therapy. So, you've got your Freudian, you've got your Jungian.
Classics.
Yeah, they're the classics. But
CBT.
CBT, and there's a whole bunch of different
cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yes, CBT. and you really need to know, do you want to be the person just sitting there talking to the therapist? There's client-centered therapy where all you do is sit and talk. They contribute very little. Or do you want a therapist like yourself to give direction?
That's exactly it. I need somebody who says, okay, I'm gonna complain, I'm gonna vent, but at the end of the day, I need some takeaways.
Yeah.
I need to know what I
CBT
can. But again, find somebody that kind of aligns with what you're looking to get out of it. I think is maybe the better way to put it.
Yes. So just be prepared that your first person you talk to might not be the right person to talk to. And be prepared to just shop around a bit. But anyway, we digress just a little bit.
Roll it back. Roll it back.
Yeah, so in terms of this conversation, what we're trying to help people understand is family violence. Intimate partner abuse it's a vast, complicated topic. there is as many different ways to be in an abusive or a difficult.
And that's the challenge. It's not a cookie cutter.
No.
You can't do a checklist, tick box as to this is happening.
No. And look, some of the people we deal with, and I'm sure you find, and some of your colleagues, I often say to people, you really want to go to court? You're living with somebody who's, you're saying is a narcissist. Who do you think's in that courtroom?
Hey, okay, all right.
Yeah. You've got to have a very
I
strong...
have my moments.
All right. No, it wasn't necessarily. But these are people with high sense of their own importance, highly skilled, highly educated. They have, they've been told they're wonderful their entire lives. And so it's completely understandable that they have this sense of entitlement. And if we look at statistically, women take about 7 years to actually finally find a way to leave an abusive relationship. So if you've been condoning this behaviour for a long time...
groomed
well,
to
and that's the other
accept.
one, exactly. You're groomed to accept this behaviour for a long, long time, and then you say no, be prepared. It's not going to be easy.
Well, I think that's also the point where people say, you know what, it's harder to get out of it than to stay in it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's the most dangerous time for women.
But that, and I don't want to get too personal, but I remember I was married to a gentleman in the Navy way back in my early years, and there were definitely challenges. He would leave for 6 months at a time because he was stationed on a carrier. But at the same time, when he came home, you get to the point where you're like, I look forward to them leaving.
Yeah.
just so I can have a break. But it wasn't so much that it was, it was just always constantly being on edge as to when he's going to spring up.
Yeah.
And so you get to the point you're like, okay, I don't know when he's going to, but if I do this, this, and this, and this, I can agitate it to the point where he can get over, he'll blow up, get over it, and we can move on to the next phase of being okay again.
Yeah.
So women to get to the point after the number of years you're talking about, it's like, okay, I know where the triggers are. I know when I'm ready to handle it. You find yourself in that pattern, you find it acceptable. And you find it acceptable because, let's be very, very clear, economics is a huge thing.
Oh, yeah.
You're in a military lifestyle. Everything's provided to housing and additional pay. Because you're married, you have a child, there's another additional pay. And I remember going to seek some help, and the guy's like, look, if what you're telling me is true, and we can document it because I could, here's what's going to happen. He's going to get demoted in rank. You're going to get less pay. You're going to get bumped out of your living situation to the next lower level because the ranks decided the housing you would get, and it just all of a sudden you're like, okay, I'm going to upend my entire world.
Yep.
Because I can't handle his outburst every once in a while. Mm-hmm. So you're doing that whole risk-benefit analysis, and you get to the point where you're like, okay, it's okay.
I'll live with it.
I can live with it. I can deal with it. I got the broader shoulders. I got the better strength, because you do. And it's like, you got the children involved now.
Yep.
So it just becomes and it does. We're not trying to minimize that these are complicated issues. Yeah. And reasons why, and the number of years you're in it. But if you're in it for 7 years, probably 5 of that has been groomed to be accepting, your situation, accepting that you start thinking that the only way you actually have control is by controlling when that person goes off.
There's a lot of people who when they go off is not so predictable. So one of the things that I find really interesting about what we call difficult personality types is that there are a number of triggers. So the whole love bombing thing, which is another, this when it comes to family violence, you can think you found the perfect partner. They treat you with
absolute respect. They love you.
Just completely idolize you. It's women want to be
and
cherished.
That's great.
Women want to be cherished apparently, and men want to be championed is an old saying. Yeah. So you find yourself in that situation, then one of 3 things happens. You get married, you have a child, or you buy a house.
All the 3 greatest stressors in a life.
And then that is the trigger for the personality to shift. And I've had this conversation many times.
Oh.
And it is that idea that now you're theirs, you're stuck, you can't.
You're stuck.
You're stuck. Now the true them becomes apparent because you can't get out of this. And
it's a long tunnel that you can't see a light at it, and you just, I'm not ready to walk that tunnel.
No.
And because you don't know if you'll ever get to the point where there's a light. But you just become so beaten down.
But the other thing is, when it's good, it's the best relationship you've ever had in your life. It's just, when it's good, it's amazing.
Right.
But when it's bad, the confusion.
You just don't know how bad it's going to get either.
Yeah.
Though.
At this time in Australia, we have lost 71 women.
Yeah. I think the other statistic was basically 1 woman a week.
Yeah.
Is killed by her partner, intimate partner, spouse. Somebody
who professed at some point to love them.
Yeah.
Now, I know we lose a lot of men, and I'm actually working with the local...
that should probably be the next topic.
Yeah. But we lose men by their own hand, which I think is a distinguishing factor. It's tragic, shouldn't happen.
But the reasons related to family violence or to family
different.
situations.
Yeah.
But they're there.
And we'll cover that one off. So if you're sitting getting angry with us, really,
there is a whole nother topic.
And
just as important.
Absolutely. And I know myself, I'm actively trying to shed some light on that myself through our practice at the moment.
Well, even the governments have decided that it can't be a single focus when we're talking about family violence. No. Can't just lay it all on the men. Can't just lay it all on one situation. But they've even said we need to review. We need men to be involved in the conversation. Well, how does that work? How does that happen?
Yeah, I love the organisation No to Violence.
Yeah. Period. Right.
Yeah, they have this lovely philosophy that they want to just flip the conversation so it's not a woman's problem.
Isn't it? To me, feminism says it was never just a woman's problem.
No, feminism is a political view.
Yeah, well.
And
I have my feminist card.
Yeah, me too. I'm proud to be an old feminist. But the whole thing is about being equitable and
exactly.
And being treated in an equitable fashion.
And that goes both ways. But how does that look for each side?
Especially when we, I'm going to get a bit deep here with the philosophical views, but especially when we come from societies that have been set up in this patriarchal fashion. Our institutions, our organisations, our education, it was designed and created for boys and men, and yes. We've moved a long way, and even some of our private schools now have girls in them.
But again, honestly, there are some systems that have been slow to evolve.
Yes. Oh, you say it so nicely.
Oh, well.
See why you are the
That's
lawyer.
That's the lawyer part. But evolution is evolution, and there are going to be spurts, and there are going to be drags, and if you just look over what it means to evolve.
Yeah.
As long as we're not going backwards. You can still take 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's still 1 step forward to me. Maybe I'm just a Pollyanna. Could be. I'll take that one on. But when it really comes down to it, there are so many different pathways, tropes. Yeah. People just get set up in these single absolutes.
Yeah. And there is no single absolute.
No.
And I suppose the big takeaway for us today is to really. If we can help people understand that if you're uncomfortable, if things aren't as you feel they should be, no matter what your gender is, where you're sitting in your time frame of your relationship, how your relationship, you can be the same sex, you can be, in any configuration of a relationship.
Right? It's a relationship.
Exactly. Any configuration of a relationship. Family violence, none of us are immune. And the key to it is finding somebody to support you and help you with whatever decision you choose.
With whatever decision you choose.
Yes.
And that, I think, is the highlight here, is that it is an individual choice.
Yep.
It is an individual decision. We just want people to be informed.
Yes.
In order to make that decision. Yep. Reach out to help make that decision. That shouldn't be a challenge either.
No.
Again, both sides.
Yeah.
Both sides.
Yep.
But we just wanted to get a high-level idea of what it means to have family violence. Mm-hmm. What does it look like? What are some of the nuances? Mm-hmm. Because some of them are nuanced. You know, some of them are very out there. You know, you take a right hook to the eye.
Yeah.
You know, you can't. No amount of stairs is going to give you that kind of a black eye. So, but there's all these other things that absolutely diminish you as a person, diminish your life,
Yes.
diminish your ability to live a life.
Yeah.
And that's where the emotional, psychological, coercion, but that happens differently for each situation, I think
Yes.
is the biggest thing. There is no cookie cutter tick box.
Nope.
So whatever is happening in your situation, don't accept the fact that somebody says, oh, well, that's not that big a deal. It's
Yeah.
like, you know what? It is to you.
Yep. And if it is to you, then
It is to you.
yeah, it is to you. It is to you.
Then that's where you go get your information, get some questions answered.
And there are a lot of places to go,
And
and
then-
we might cover that off in the
Next
future.
one. In the future, we're also going to look at men's issues and how that affects family
Absolutely.
violence affects them as well. Well, I think we should also look at teenagers because that's where a lot of the relationships first start and develop.
That's an interesting point. Yeah, I hadn't thought of that one. Yeah.
And I've had 2 daughters and a granddaughter now. She just turned 18. Those situations, I can't imagine as me as a teenager going through half these situations that my children went through and then my granddaughter went through. And so relationships, you know, I think it's important for young people to understand what family violence is, how that affects them, because it is different for them.
Well, and the impact social media is having.
There we go.
Yeah. Anyway,
Thank you for joining us today.
Thank
Hope
you.
that was helpful.
Yes, thank you very
and
much.
Join us for the next one.
and if there's something you'd like to contribute, what's our website name? I forget.
Lawyer Mediator Bar.
Lawyer
just took it.
Mediator Bar. Yeah. So
LMB.
www.lawyermediatorbar.com.au.
And come
please-
visit us.
Come visit us, ask
Send
a
us a
question.
note.
We're happy to, if at all possible. But remember, we can't give legal advice.
No, we're not
Nothing
giving legal
specific.
advice. We're not giving psychological advice. But we may be able to help you in a direction.
Yeah.
That's probably about the
absolutely.
most we could probably do.
Absolutely. All right.
Thank you again.